Ambati Rayudu is not playing well. In this league, he is one of the biggest stars, the Indian player that has to help sell tickets. And the Indian player who's making runs in this league is Rajagopal Satish, a journeyman from Tamil Nadu who can't always get in his own domestic team. Rayudu was a child prodigy, under-19 captain and future Indian star. He might to this day be one of the most talented players in modern cricket to never be an international success. Certainly one of the world's best players of spin and a master of the open and closed bat phase, with 6 IPL titles spread across the dynastic IPL sides. Yet, all those years ago when he was in the Indian Cricket League's low talent pool, a journeyman outshone him. Bharat Sundaresan calls Ambati Rayudu a genius batter, but so is Matthew Elliott, Mark Ramprakash and Graham Hick. When you wanted Rayudu to be the star he was born to be, quite often he just wasn't. But as a journeyman himself, he might have been the greatest, third or second tier star on any of the IPL teams he represented. And had he not gone to the ICL, who knows, because he really could have been anything. But that cloud stayed over him pretty much all the way through his career. And yet, in 55 ODIs, he still managed to average 47. Ian Bishop on commentary said, "Ambati Rayudu, if you finish this and ride into the IPL sunset on the back of this, it will be a story to tell." That was as the small CSK man hit a 6, a 4 and a 6 against Mohit Sharma in the final of the 2023 edition. Rayudu would be dismissed off the next delivery, walking off virtually in tears as he couldn't quite finish it for the team in yellow. And isn't that the story of Rayudu? There is always something happening with him. Good and bad, that part never really seemed to matter. When facing a spinner in the middle overs, he was in complete control. In almost every other part of his career, he was all over the place. If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today. Way back in 2002, at the age of 17, Rayudu made all the headlines when he smashed a double century and then another 100 for Hyderabad against Andhra in a Ranji game. That made him the youngest Indian to do that. And it's not often you see players hit more than 300 runs in a single first-class game, let alone a teenager doing that in what was his second year of senior cricket. The talent was dripping off him, and as with any prodigy, it meant that there were huge expectations. And it didn't take long for him to be added to the India A side as well, where he played a significant number of matches in 2003 as they toured England and the West Indies. And runs flowed off his bat wherever he went, so it came as no surprise to anyone that he was appointed as the captain of the India Under-19s team for the 2004 Under-19 World Cup. And India were dominant in the tournament. Their only loss in the group stage was coming at the hands of South Africa, and even that one was only by 3 runs. This was an Indian side with some players who would go on to be, the sorts of players that you are going to know the minute I say. Shikhar Dhawan, Robin Uthappa, Ambati Rayudu, Suresh Raina and Dinesh Karthik. And it's worth pointing out that that was their top 5. It was absolutely stacked, and there was no doubt that they were looking like one of the favourites and the most likely to win the tournament. Unfortunately for Rayudu, a code of conduct breach for persistent time wasting in India's group game against Sri Lanka resulted in a 1-match ban. The game that he would miss was the World Cup semi-final against Pakistan. And to be honest, this was not the only disciplinary issue he had throughout his career. And at that point, Rayudu hadn't had a massive tournament, but India did miss him in the semi-final. They ended up just scoring 169, and the guy promoted to number 3 in his absence, Wagella, got a first ball duck. Pakistan won that game by 5 wickets, and eventually the title as well. And domestically, things were also a bit of an issue for him. Rayudu was having issues with his Ranji team. He didn't see eye to eye with the Hyderabad Cricket Association, or particularly the secretary, Shivlal Yadav, whose son Arjun, according to Rayudu, was receiving special treatment. He briefly switched to Andhra in 2005-06 and actually had a run-in with Arjun when they faced each other. Surprisingly, he returned to Hyderabad in 6-7, and things just didn't really work for him. He was frustrated and unhappy with the treatment he was receiving, and he was labelled a hothead and emotional. And if we're being honest, that has stuck with him pretty much all the way through his career. And this is part of the reason why, along with not having been picked for India already, that when the rebel Indian Cricket League came calling in 2007, he jumped at the opportunity in spite of the fact that it came with a BCCI ban. He wouldn't be able to play domestic cricket and so would not qualify to play for India. And of course, his dream was to play for the national side, but at that point, he was so frustrated by what was going on in Hyderabad that he didn't really care all that much anymore. And imagine this, a former Indian under-19 skipper who had already played for the India A team deciding to shelve his dream of playing for the international team at just the age of 22. And joining the ICL came with its own challenges. Obviously, the BCCI refused to sanction it, and the ICC and other boards followed suit, making it nearly impossible to recruit top-quality current players. All the Indian internationals gave it a miss, but it also meant that there were more opportunities for the likes of Rayudu. In fact, we just did a whole video on that tournament, so go check that one out later. And in an interview with Ranveer Alabadia last year, Rayudu said that the ICL actually had a huge impact on his career in many different ways. But the one big resource for him at that time was that he got access to a lot of top quality coaches. For Rayudu, working with Steve Rixon's in the Hyderabad Heroes setup was a complete game changer. Rixon had already been at the helm of New Zealand, New South Wales and Surrey by then, and he's kind of known as a coach's coach. He's the perfect person to have in charge of a younger player, and Rayudu was definitely one of those. The Hyderabad Heroes emerged champions of the ICL 20s Grand Championship. Yep, that was a real thing. In 2008, Rayudu was one of the youngest members of the squad, because the ICL was basically a veterans league. Despite struggling all the way through the tournament, he was player of the match in both games of the final series. The ICL lasted just 2 seasons, although there were so many iterations, I'm now confused how many times it was played. But Rayudu was still well enough known to be headhunted at the end by IPL scouts. So when the BCCI granted amnesty for players who had been there, it gave the likes of Rayudu a chance at redemption and rebirth. 3 IPL teams came knocking on the door. One of them was Deccan Chargers, which of course was based out of Hyderabad, so would have been his home team. And it wasn't an auction, so he just had a choice to make. And while Deccan had been his home team and the most recent winners, he actually chose Mumbai Indians. So, the Deccan team didn't actually survive all that much longer. He probably picked the better team. And this was a rebirth that, let's be honest, even he wouldn't have imagined possible. With all the stuff that had been going around with the ICL, suddenly he's in the main tournament. And in 7 seasons with the Mumbai Indians, they would reach 4 IPL finals, they would win 3, and also he would claim 2 Champion League titles as well. That tournament doesn't even exist anymore, although maybe it will again. 5 titles in 7 years was a golden era for that hugely successful franchise. And he was at the center of all of it, yet never big enough to be an automatic choice, so he was released in 2017. Rayudu found himself going from blue and gold to the yellow of CSK, a team that was also no stranger to success. And it's funny how despite all the instability he had endured all the way through his domestic cricket, and it was so bad that he revealed he was close to quitting the sport altogether before the ICL came along. Not to mention how many times he was overlooked for India as well. By a happy twist of fate, he suddenly found himself in 2 of the most settled environments in the IPL. In 2017, because of injuries for Mumbai, he only played 5 matches, but in 2018 for CSK, he actually had his best season ever, scoring 600 runs at a strike rate of nearly 150. He was in the perfect situations, because the wickets spin in CSK, partly because the wickets do naturally, but also because that's what they encourage. So for a player like him or Suresh Raina, you are putting them right in their element. Fittingly, he hit the winning runs in the final against the Sunrisers to give MSD's men their 3rd IPL title. It was a dream season for Rayudu, and it only got sweeter because he was in such great form in the IPL that he was also back in the Indian mix. And with the World Cup looming, this was a huge opportunity for Rayudu. Many will say he did enough to actually make it to that squad for the 2019 World Cup. In fact, 6 months before the tournament, Captain Virat Kohli was very public with the fact that their hunt for number 4 was now finally over. So how did he go from that to not making the squad? He didn't actually have the best of runs ahead of the tournament, but the management opted for someone who wasn't really a properly tested number 4 in Vijay Shankar. And in the end, Rayudu didn't have enough dimensions, it would seem. And this is a man who doesn't tweet very often, but he did then. A snarky post saying that he ordered 3D glasses to watch the World Cup, which was a snipe at the selector's indication that Shankar was picked ahead of him because he was a 3-dimensional player. To make matters even worse, despite naming Rayudu as a standby player, India chose to go with a middle order bat in Rishabh Pant to replace Shikhar Dhawan and an uncapped opener Mayank Agarwal in place of the 3D all-rounder Shankar. And let us remember that the Indian number 4 position at that stage was a little bit of a cesspool. So the question has to be, would Rayudu have helped under grey clouds at Old Trafford when New Zealand got on top? Who knows? But the World Cup snub was the end of the international road for Rayudu. He decided that would be so by retiring from all formats of the game, International, IPL and Ranji Trophy, just like the whole enchilada. And then he changed his mind and was convinced to come back to his domestic sides. In fact, like he had with the ICL, he helped build another new precedent when he worked out he could retire at the end of the year and potentially go off and play in another league and then unretire for the IPL again. The BCCI worked out, I think, what the plan was here, and they said that players would need a 2-year cooling off period after their retirement. Eventually that all got worked out some way or another, and then the second time when he retired, he would actually stay retired. But he went on to play in the CPL and the ILT20. So he changed the rules on retirement and became really the first major Indian player to be out in the world as a franchise guy. The lack of a long Indian career is certainly going to be a big part of how a lot of people remember him. But cricket has changed, right? And who knows how big the IPL will be in the future. If you look at his IPL record, it's certainly something very different. I mean, his tally of 6 titles is equal first with Rohit Sharma. You can't get many bigger names in cricket, and certainly in the IPL, than that. So let us just recap for a moment, because this is an incredible journey. He was an underage prodigy who missed the big game, got involved in an early scandal, a rebel cricketer who failed to make a mark, was ignored by India, retired, unretired, retired, became a franchise player, and despite getting to the IPL late, and actually because he was banned from it, he has the equal most titles ever and more than even MS Dhoni. Ambati Rayudu was a genius against the spinning ball, a rebel, frequently retired, overlooked, hot-headed, and certainly a winner. With his talent, he could have done a lot more in international cricket, but few players have ever packed in as much as he did. A lot of people complain that I'm not a former cricketer, and so that I don't really know the game. Well, you know what they can't claim? That I don't know desks. I've been using desks for years. I'm a collector of desks, old and new, and I'm sitting on a new one right now. I'm the Don Bradman of sitting at desks. So when I tell you that the E7 Pro next generation height adjustable desk from FlexiSpot is legit, this is like Michael Jordan talking to you about sneakers. This desk holds 160 kilograms. It is as stable as anything I've ever seen, and it has under desk cable management. But really, the main skill here is that this desk rises and falls at the push of a button, and it moves super quick. And it has so many settings that remember your favorite heights. It really does it all. And I could not recommend the E7 Pro from FlexiSpot anymore, even though I am currently sitting on one of FlexiSpot's BS12 Pro multifunctional, adjustable, upgraded fabric, ergonomic chairs. My butt and computer have never been happier than when using one of FlexiSpot's products. So get over to their page right now for big savings.